I should have done the job the right way in the first place. If they wanted to buy more or I could cross-sell, fine, but not the same product and the same thing. I was a new agent. I didn't know what I was doing. So what I had to do was learn to build a book of business really quickly, multiple times. The only answer I know to that for a young kid without much of a budget, bartending part-time to pay his extra bills, is to learn how to become a prospecting machine, Freddy. That's what I did. One agency departure to the next led me, or forced me rather, to become a reluctant, freakish prospector, right? Eventually, I fell in love with the process and embraced it and really started to become a refined prospecting machine, to the point where my success at the last agency really took off and I started to teach this to other people. Now, where this happens and how we get to today is like this. The CEO and founder of Maverick App became an insurance customer of mine. We sat down, we had a couple of beers, we got along really well. And it turns out I was doing all of the things manually in all my prospecting efforts that Maverick App automates. I was doing the list building, I was doing the outreach, I was doing the following up, spending hours and hours of time just to get someone to finally say yes or no or maybe.
But I am the world's biggest super fan.
You're like a super fan.
Welcome to the Business Superfans Podcast. We will discuss how establishing business superfans from customers, employees, and business partners can elevate your success exponentially. Learn why these advocates are a key factor to achieving excellence in the world of commerce. We discuss the invaluable insights of business owners who have successfully implemented the strategies in the book to build their own team of devoted superfans. Gain insightful knowledge from the experts who create applications to help you create passionate superfans. This is the Business Superfans Podcast with your host, Freddy D.
Ready!
Joining us today is Steve Wallace, the dynamic Chief Revenue Officer at Maverick App, a cutting-edge prospecting automation company empowering sales professionals and high-ticket closers. Steve is a devoted husband, loving father, and a man of unshakable faith. But he isn't your typical tech executive. He passionately opposes the easy-button mindset. Steve openly admits he may not be the smartest or most creative person in the room, but he confidently claims the title of the hardest worker. His powerful mantra is simple yet profound: outwork everyone. He believes automation can enhance sales efforts, but insists it can never replace genuine hustle and authentic human connection. Steve champions hard work and meaningful relationships as essential ingredients for sustained growth and success. In the realm of sales, Steve Wallace firmly believes automation is a powerful ally, but never a substitute for the human effort, hustle, and authentic connections that drive true success. He passionately champions the idea that blending technology with relentless personal effort is the key to exponential business growth. Steve is more than a professional. He's a dynamic driving force dedicated to empowering salespeople and business owners to achieve extraordinary results. Join us as Steve shares his journey and insights, driven by determination, unwavering work ethic, and a genuine passion for helping others sell more and succeed faster. Let's dive in.
Welcome, Steve Wallace from the Maverick App to the Business Superfans Podcast. We're excited to have you here this morning, Steve. How are you?
Freddy, hey man, I'm great. I'm excited. Thanks for having me here. How are you?
I'm doing fired up, man. Fired up. So
love it. Same here.
Excited to hear about your story of where did you come from and how did you come up with Maverick App?
So to jump ahead and then go backwards, Maverick App is not my tool. I'm not the founder, but I stepped in and started help building out, and I guess you can go with the founder of some of our SOPs that have led our customers to be most successful. But that's all part of the story, actually. So I wasn't always, and we can all say this, but I wasn't always in the position that I'm in. I started out as an insurance producer. And For those of you listening in, when you're an insurance producer, you're basically running your own business. I don't care what people tell you. Doesn't matter how you're paid according to tax paperwork. You're running your own practice and you're making your own decisions. And most of them are the drivers of their own destiny. I was no different. I had to find my own leads. I had to bring them in to the pipeline, close them, service them. And when I first got started, Freddie, I'm telling you, I didn't know anything. I was freshly licensed. I didn't know how to sell. I'm self-taught in sales. And really what ended up happening was I would talk to anybody that had a pulse, and that's fine. I was really consistent. I was a hard worker, and I built a nice book of business at the first agency before I realized I didn't want to stay there. Not a good culture for growth. I left. And then I did the same thing 2 more times before I finally settled into a agency that I felt supported at, that I enjoyed, and I really started to become a leaderboard producer. That said, why do I bring all that up? Because going from one agency to the next means I had to build my book of business new each time.
It's a do-over.
The do-over. Now, to those of you who do know the industry, you might say, well, Steve, why didn't you just reach out to your old customers? Because I don't believe in rewriting the same product for the same customer just so I can make a commission. I should have done the job the right way in the first place. If they wanted to buy more or I could cross-sell, fine, but not the same product and the same thing. I was a new agent. I didn't know what I was doing. So what I had to do was learn to build a book of business really quickly, multiple times. The only answer I know to that for a young kid without much of a budget, bartending part-time to pay his extra bills, is to learn how to become a prospecting machine, Freddie. That's what I did. One agency departure to the next led me, or forced me rather, to become a reluctant, freakish prospector, right? Eventually, I fell in love with the process and embraced it and really started to become a refined prospecting machine, to the point where my success at the last agency really took off, and I started to teach this to other people. Now, where this happens and how we get to today is like this. The CEO and founder of Maverick App became an insurance customer of mine. We sat down, we had a couple of beers, we got along really well. And it turns out I was doing all of the things manually in all my prospecting efforts that Maverick App automates. I was doing the list building, I was doing the outreach, I was doing the following up, spending hours and hours of time just to get someone to finally say yes or no or maybe. So he understood that I was doing those things. I understood that Maverick App was doing those things. And we decided to work together. He offered me a job. And after building a pretty successful practice, there was a leap of faith involved, but I made a switch and became the chief revenue officer for Maverick App, doing the same exact things, but in an automated fashion. That's how I got here today.
Very cool. I remember my days when I first started out in sales. I was fortunate. I went through about 6 months of high-end sales training, and I used to be an engineer.
Wow.
I was a draftsman, and then I got into the computer-aided design world. When it first began, it was called CAD/CAM, computer-aided design, computer manufacturing. My presentation skills were not the strongest. So they had me do the installation and training of software. My first company, keep it nameless, but I went in there and I had the manual, and I was reading the manual, and you'd be my student. It was 2 of us, fortunately, 2 computers, and I was teaching. And I say, okay, Steve, I want you to go to this thing here and do these commands. And then I'd be reading the next paragraph of what you're supposed to do next. And then I went to a larger company, and it was a room of people. So I'm speaking in front of a room, and that was not my character. I was doing the same thing, having people to go through the manual and reading them all the manual. A manager called me up and said, that was the worst effing training I've ever seen in my life. He goes, I'm going to give you till tomorrow morning to get it figured out.
Wow.
I slept well, and I created engagement training. So I started a conversation where it turned around and says, hey, Steve, what's the command line to create a box? Steve, no, he needs semicolon or whatever. All right, John, do you agree with Mike of what Steve did? Well, yes, I do. Okay, well, that is correct. After a while, I became the most sought after installer and trainer for most of the Midwest. I bring this up because just like you, I didn't understand any of that stuff. I had to teach myself. And then when I went into sales, I did prospecting as well because I had to. It's like, okay, now you're a sales guy. Now you're supposed to sell this technology. Go find people. And it was a lot of work because this is back in the 80s. We didn't have tools. You bought a manufacturing directory and SIC code 3544, which was tool and die. And this is my territory. These are the companies. And I had to reach out to these people with a phone call, letter. There was no email. So what you guys put together with Maverick App is a game changer from what we used to have to do.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And what I used to have to do, and even more recently, and to an extent, some business owners still have to do the manual tasks that Maverick App and tools like it automate. Maybe lack of a budget, lack of understanding of what their options are. There's a lot of different reasons for why that could be. But there are many people out there building a business on good old fashioned grunt work. And I think that's phenomenal, by the way, because those are the people who will appreciate and understand a tool like Maverick App.
Yeah, I just recently worked with a company. They were still doing, folders. They were excited that they were using Microsoft Excel to track stuff. I was going like, okay, good job. You're moving forward, but you're like still several decades behind.
Baby steps.
Yeah, except the clock's rolling, buddy.
Yeah, true.
So let's talk a little bit about what does Maverick App actually do?
Sure. There's two answers to every question, I think. So what it's really doing is giving you your time back. Here's what I mean by that. If you were starting your business today, like right now, and you didn't have any referral partners, if you didn't have anybody to meet with, didn't know anybody you could leverage for referrals, no sales conversations, and no revenue, what's the very first thing that you would do?
Identify what my ideal prospect is, my ideal customer, and then put together a marketing campaign to go after them.
Love it. How long do you think it would take for you to put together a list of prospects that you could reach out to every day without being annoying?
Well, back when I was selling manufacturing technology, I bought a manufacturer's directory, paid them $300, $400, $500 for the book. Then I had to manually look at SIC code 3544 was tool and die shops. So then I had to put in, and unfortunately, I wrote my own CRM in 86.
Oh, wow.
I would put the business name in, the president and the vice president, their contact information.
Right.
So I had to do all that manually because it was out of a book. There was no technology to just import a file. Right. And then I ended up creating a letter and then mailing them out a letter.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Old school. I mean, really old school.
I love it. Yeah.
But it would work. Because what I would do is at that time, part of the letter was introducing them to the new technology, but two, inviting them to a lunch and learn to learn about the evolution of where the engineering and manufacturing market space was going and how technology was changing that space. So I wasn't selling, I was educating.
Right.
But once they came in, we did a presentation of our software, still not selling, talking about how the technology is transforming businesses. And then what would happen is they would make the mistake of inviting me to come in and assess how the technology could potentially impact their business.
Sure. They made the mistake. I'd like to hear more about that.
You can do the math. Yeah. I'm invited in. It's like inviting the fox into the hen house.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to answer your question, Freddie, so you mentioned that you would either spend time or money building lists, and then you'd do something with the list, which is, in your case, you would do snail mail, which I love, but you took a manual action to prospect to them in some way, shape, or form. And then after that's over, I'm sure it took a decent amount of your time or money or effort to get people into the room or to get people to pay attention to you.
You had to follow up, send a phone, you had to call them. See if they got the letter, see if they're interested, and then convince them that it's worth their time. It's free lunch.
Right.
And worst thing you know is you get educated into where the industry is going. So that was their downside, is that they'd be at least educated on what's happening. Right. And that was it.
Right. So all that you shared is a yesteryear version of what Maverick App does. Maverick App automatically builds that prospect list for you. Job title, contact information, where they can be found, company information, LinkedIn profile, insights, etc. But a list isn't enough. It doesn't help the average salesperson or business owner. Action needs to be taken, like you said. And so it will automatically, instead of snail mail, it'll email. And it'll do it one at a time, the exact way a person would email a person, which is one at a time. And if you don't get a reply, another one will go. So kind of like a sequence, but it looks hyper-personalized. And then because we know from thousands and thousands of interactions and years of sales experience that most people don't reply right away, or most people won't even get back to you, or if they do get back to you, they won't work with you right away and you follow up. We know all of this data. We also hyper-personalize relevant automated follow-up to create a relationship. which is lacking in a lot of sales these days. So the long answer short is Maverick App automates everything that you just told me you did. That gives you your time back.
Yeah, I cheated a little bit. I'd hired some of the staff to help the things. And since I was selling into a man's world, which was a manufacturing space back then, I would hire the ladies that were in the executive suite to make the phone calls to reach out. And they'd take the phone call and then they'd be inviting them again. So it was a multi-touch approach because I would reach out and then I'd have them reach out. And just like you said, people don't necessarily respond on the first time. It may take 6, 7, 8 contacts.
Yeah.
And so we would mail out a reminder that the event is coming up. So we would start like 6 weeks out back then to get maybe 6 people show up at the luncheon.
Right.
But that's all I needed is 6 because 1 or 2 out of the 6, and I'd be selling $100,000 software package with computer and all that stuff. That's all I needed.
Boom. That's brilliant. I love it. I love it. That's what you're looking for. And what you've just told me, Freddy, is your awareness of your funnel, your closing ratios, starting with a larger number is at the top of your funnel. And then every step further down the funnel represents a stage. At the bottom of the funnel or near the bottom are the people in the room. And once you had the people in the room, you had them. Because even if the people that didn't buy right then, or even if there were people in the room who didn't buy right then, you could always follow up and request, hey, you went a different direction. It's been about 6 months.
There's times where they didn't go in any direction. They weren't ready.
Right.
It wasn't their time. But I reached out back 6 months later and says, yeah, let's have that conversation.
Right.
I remember one time where we were in Chicago. I ran the Chicago district and we had one guy showing up. We were in the burbs. This guy was downtown Chicago. I was like, man, we got to
from
drive
Downers Grove, by the way.
Oh, okay. So, so I was in Schaumburg.
Okay. Yeah.
So we had to drive all the way downtown. It's like one guy. It's like, well, my tech didn't want to go. And I says, you know what? Worst case, it's practice. So we schlepped all the computer stuff. I had to load it all back up. There was no laptops back then, big computers. So we took it all down there, had to brought it up, set it all up. And it turns out the guy's the VP of manufacturing. So we did the presentation, liked it, invited us to his company to take a look and show him what it could do for his work. Next thing I knew, we walked out with a $100,000 sale. And then 6 months later, he bought a second seat for about $50,000.
Wow.
The bottom line was, as you were talking from the funnel, he was qualified. So there you have it.
Yeah, there you have it. It's great. I love it.
So Steve, share a story with our listeners of how Maverick App transformed someone's business.
Yeah, there's a bunch, but there's a couple favorites. One of my favorite is a complete and total metamorphosis. And I'll try to avoid some industry jargon here, but I love this story so much because when we came into the picture, one, we were not the first call. We were actually the second or even the third on this evaluation list of vendors, right? We weren't being seriously considered. But I believe that our sales experience and consultative approach with the prospect is what actually closed the deal. So before working with us, they were manually building lists and spending money on lists. They would put those lists into a CRM, which is not the bad thing. You need to track your contacts. But then they would use the CRM to send sales emails to people who have never heard from them before. Okay. And from a cold email prospecting perspective, this will inevitably damage your domain. So you won't be able to send more emails eventually. It will inevitably go to junk. And it signals to the recipient of the emails that you didn't actually take the time to email them. Now, maybe some people don't care about that, but in the world of email prospecting to set meetings, this is literally a waste of time. You are spending time on a practice that will backfire. And then you, not you literally, Freddy, but the practice of these ideas will claim that it didn't work. When in reality, it works quite well if you change the practices. So we found out all of this during discovery, Freddy, that they were doing these practices incorrectly. They were cold emailing incorrectly. And I shared the framework or the roadmap to successful cold emailing. That was an eye opener to them. They said, oh, interesting. Maybe this will work for me. We still have to figure out a few other ideas to make this successful, but we just identified 2 or 3 golden nuggets that we were doing that were backfiring on us. And we were saying that this practice doesn't work. No, the way you were doing it doesn't work. And our team identified it. We implemented the right SOPs to email successfully. Instantaneously, they start getting email replies. Yeses, nos, out of office messages. By the way, to the viewers and listeners, getting an out of office message is the sign that your emails are going to the inbox, which is a home run. It means when that person comes back from their vacation, they're going to see your email. That's a good thing. Just like to focus on that for a second. So we fixed their cold email prospecting before they ever worked with us, Freddy. That's not the product. That's the skill and the consultative ability of our team before someone ever worked with us. So call to action for your audience, we love that. We're going to add value to our meeting no matter what happens. If we never work together, we're going to identify some weak areas in your prospecting and help you improve them like that. If it's in a way that we can help you, we'll recommend it. But if not, you'll still get some takeaways. Okay. Next, they start working with us. And within a matter of weeks, they have more leads than they've ever had before, to the point where they start getting overwhelmed. Now, we're a prospecting company. Our success is dictated by hitting metrics. A successful prospecting salesperson focuses on their activity, not outcomes, right? So we're focused on the activity, but in this case, the activity created the outcome the customer was looking for, to the point where they said, hey, Steve, I don't know how to follow up with all of these leads. And you might love this because you're a super fan, right? We wanted to make this customer a super fan. So we sat down, we did what we call a flight check, which is basically just a sales consult to talk about what's working, what can be improved. And Freddy, we put together messaging for every single one of the prospects they had met with, hyper-personalized the follow-up so that the person who requested follow-up in 6 months, it was done, it was relevant. And if the prospect never replied, another hyper-relevant message would go out. So now our customer is thrilled because 1, they weren't going to do it. 2, they didn't know how. 3, it's consistent. It's not taking them all the time. And we're building now pipeline and later pipeline. They made their money back within the first couple months, which is a great success story for prospecting, sales, and marketing, right? So the before and after is a complete metamorphosis from not prospecting by email successfully at all to changing the way they did it. Even if they didn't work with us, they did, to getting leads and closing business, and to still having a pipeline to this day. Just a home run as far as what we're looking for from a client engagement. We loved it.
That's a great story. And now they're your super fan, telling everybody, all the other business owners that they know,
right,
about the success that they've had. And they're basically your sales force.
100%. And I truly believe that one of the things that separates us at Maverick App is our sales experience. Yes, we have a product attached to it, but I'm not funneling every single answer that I give the prospect through the lens of how do I sell Maverick App. I'm funneling every question a prospect asks me through the lens of what would I do if I were them? I think the only way you can do that is if you've been in the trenches of sales, have got your teeth kicked in, have tried new ideas, what's worked, what hasn't, and then shared what you've learned with people.
Yeah. You remind me of when I was selling manufacturing software. I didn't get into the features and functions of the software. I got into, okay, Steve, where do you see yourself in 3 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's the biggest challenges holding you back from that perspective? And what are the pitfalls? We got into that type of a conversation. And then have you ever thought through what the investment is going to cost? And when do you anticipate the return on investment? Most would never think that perspective.
Right.
And we would work in a sale backwards. You think you want to be making money with this technology tomorrow, that's not going to happen. First off, you can't shut down your business and implement new technology. You're going to run the old way and you're going to run the new way simultaneously. And at some point you start phasing out the old way, and then you got to get everybody onto the new way, set up systems, processes, and everything else, and pay it back. So recoup the cost before you start seeing a profit. It could be a year laid out. In your case, it was months, but when I was selling high-end manufacturing technology costing 100 to 200 grand,
Right.
that didn't take 3 months to recoup. But it could be fast because in the case of the manufacturing, scrapping metal, that's $20,000 for a block of steel that you screwed up. That's a big chunk of your profit that just went out the door.
Right.
So when we would work that perspective and that approach, this would collapse the sales cycle because it says, well, based upon your timeline that we just laid out to reach the profitability point that you want, Steve, that we just marked up on a market board, I need that PO later today. And I'd get it because they're emotionally connected to the whole deal.
People buy emotionally and then justify logically.
Yep.
And your method there about building the sale backwards, I think that might not be the terminology you used, but using their plans in a logical fashion captures emotion and logic. How could the prospect debate
They
that?
can't because it's their plan.
Right.
I just laid it all out in front of them on the board. We marked it up on the marker board. And then they'd be like, yeah, oh, we need to tweak that. And all of a sudden, they would visualize where things were at and what they needed to do. And it was done. There was no competition. It was over.
Right. Yeah, I love it. That's great. I love these war stories, Freddy.
Yeah,
Stories are great.
So what's a takeaway that a business can actually take away and put into play? Because here you talked about some of the things that you guys did prior to even the customer using your solution. So what's one takeaway out of that exercise that you guys did that people should be looking to make sure that their emails and their approach, they don't have this platform yet, but what can they do today to improve their engagement?
If they never work with me, what can they do right away to improve their prospecting success?
Yep.
Don't stop at one. If you've learned anything from Freddy and I today, it's that most people will not reply to you in any way, shape, or form on the first try. So keep going. Don't be annoying, but keep going. 5, 6, 7, whatever it takes. It becomes hard to track. We can talk about Maverick App. We do that. We follow up, but that's besides the point. So that's number one. Keep going. Number two, don't spam people. Send one email at a time. Make sure it's relevant. That's how you successfully email prospect. The way Freddy would email me if we had never met personally, that's how you'd want to prospect with other people. The third is go to other channels and reference the activity of the first channel. So if I email Freddy, the first thing I'm going to do is either call him or send him a message on LinkedIn. And I would make fun of myself almost just to give him something different to consider. My LinkedIn message would say something like, hey, Freddy, I just sent you a really dumb, silly email. Hope you don't mind a fresh, silly perspective. If it's worth talking about, connect back. Put yourself in the position of the recipient of a message like that. What's the first thing you're going to do? Go check your email.
Yeah. The same thing is you want to make people laugh. That's one of the secrets is making people laugh.
Right.
People laugh, the tension's down, you're starting to establish a rapport.
Right.
And that the conversation is much easier.
Right. Yeah. Give people a reason to behave like a human being.
And don't forget old school approach.
Right.
Mail. Everybody talks about.
Oh, heck yeah.
Everybody talks about all these cool things, text message, email, social media. But you know what? An old fashioned postcard, card, or letter gets opened.
Goes a long way. That goes a long way.
Like you're saying, Steve, you use a multi-pronged approach. You're bound to get something and something to budge because you shoot the email, you send a message via LinkedIn, like you just said, and then you follow up with a letter or a card in the mail, and they open it up and they go, oh man, it's a Steve guy again, you know? I got to give him some credit. And you might have a funny picture in the card or whatever. And all of a sudden they go, I'm going to give this guy a shot or this gal a shot. That's all you need. That's what you want.
Earn it. Yeah. Sellers have to earn the business that they want. So why not start with the very first interaction?
Yeah. Well, people don't want to be sold, but everybody wants to buy something.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to give them a reason to have that conversation so they can buy.
Right. Absolutely. Do I have time for a very short story, Freddy?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this goes back to what we were talking about. I did this just earlier in the week. Once a month, I go live and I do a live power hour. Anybody can watch me do it. It's for my own business. So selfishly, it benefits me, but it's a thought leadership thing that I do. We record it. We can repurpose the video into social media posts and pictures, etc. That's not the point. I called the guy. He's the CEO of a tech company. I left him a silly voicemail, and then I immediately connected on LinkedIn and I mentioned the silly voicemail. In that voicemail, I offer, hey, I'd like to earn the business. Business starts over coffee. Why don't I buy you one and share some ideas over that coffee? If you like the ideas, then we can dive deeper. If you hate them, then never shall we speak again. And you're one free coffee for the better. Thoughts? ? Send. That's the whole thing, right? He forwarded it to his chief revenue officer. The next day I messaged him again. I said, hey, what's your favorite kind of coffee? Starbucks? And I Googled a local coffee shop to where he lives, where he works. And I mentioned that too. I forget what the name was, Starbucks or, Aroma Joe's or whatever, right? He said neither actually, but great script. I forwarded it to my CRO, call him next week. So my only point is referencing one channel and the other gets the results. Just go for a full experience. It works.
Absolutely. I ran a networking group in Chicago back in 2008 on Lincoln Avenue there in Lincoln Park at Rinaldi's Pizzeria.
Oh, wow.
And there's no parking if you know where that place is at. Now we get 45 people in to come into my networking group. It was lunch and learn. The whole joke was that was the only place you could go to network and have the potential to walk out with a profit, because it was a $10 to $15 for the lunch. And then we would do a drawing of the business cards and someone would win a $25 gift card. So somebody would end up getting a $10 profit, free lunch, $10 profit, and connected with people. And that was the whole gig. The group was called Build Relationships and Build Business. It wasn't rocket science. It was super simple.
Yeah. Simple.
But it was
Clever is the enemy of clarity, right? Simple works. Less is more. That's great. I love it.
Let's talk about some of the features that Maverick offers. As we talked about what it does, let's break it down to some of the features. So our listener that's looking for a solution to prospecting can understand a little bit better of what this does for them.
You can buy Maverick App as a do-it-yourself platform, or you can pay our team to help you out in a done with you or done for you subscription. Each one of those subscriptions, we're going to find you up to about 1,000 of your target market, ideal client prospects per month. Every one of them will have been reached out to by email. Every one of them will have been warmed up, meaning even if they haven't replied, we can show you data that shows that they've opened your email, how many times it's been opened, to give you actionable insights into what sales ideas, what sales actions you should take so that you can make more money faster. For example, Freddy, I can give you a list of people who have opened your emails 5 times or more, and you should call those people versus the people who have not opened your emails at all.
Right.
That's all apart from people who have replied. We all know what to do with replies. If it's a yes, it's a lead, right? It's pretty straightforward. So Maverick App will find about 1,000 of those a month. It will have warmed them up. It will have tracked them. It will have put the user in a position to follow up with each and every one of them who do reply in a hyper-personalized but automated way. All of these things giving your time way back to you, just 10 plus hours a week, easily. And that's assuming you never do anything else with the platform, like reaching out by phone or LinkedIn.
It's pretty powerful.
Built for a sales hunter. Built for a sales hunter. If you know your sales process and know you want to do daily outreach, this is the tool for you.
What industries? Can it cover all industries, or is there specific industries that this platform really shines for?
Awesome question. So easier to answer what we don't work well with. E-commerce, not a great fit for. Retail, any industry or company where the consumer goes to them, not a great fit. Either the owners of that company don't understand cold outreach because they don't have to do it. They've never had to do it. Or quite simply, their consumer won't care. It's not relevant for them. As long as it's B2B, we can make a business case for Maverick App. But where Maverick App really shines is financial advisors, insurance agents, people responsible for their own sales cycle, the people who wake up every day as if they were starting their business from day one and they want to do something about it. That's who Maverick App is for. SDRs, fractional sales companies, professions like that, industries like that.
Okay, great to know. All right, Steve, as we wrap up here, how can people find Maverick App?
Maverickapp.io is the website. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's my professional playground. You can look me up on LinkedIn. It's Stephen Wallace, Chief Sales Nerd at Maverick App. If you search for those things, you'll find me. I have plenty of podcasts and content that I put out. And I will say, shameless plug, I put out so much how-to content that you could never speak with me and grow your business. I'm confident about that because it's super tactical advice that I give out. You can also email me at steve@maverickapp.io.
And do you have something for our listener here that could benefit them?
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to the story I shared earlier. Schedule time. And there's a reason I bring that up. There's a lot of advice about what you should do out there. Everybody will intellectually agree they need to meet new people. Everyone will intellectually agree they need to get referrals and network and pick up the phone, whatever. There's a ton. There's very few people out there who are going to tell you what you shouldn't do and how much time it'll save you not to do it. So schedule time with me to figure out a prospecting and business development plan that will work for your business. This is obviously something that might not involve Maverick App ever. That's fine. But I want you to get value out of your time with me. And I think the best way I can do that for your audience is to offer ideas that will work and that won't work and why, and save people a lot of pain of finding out themselves.
That's a great offer because that's a tremendous value. And for anybody that's listening, I should really take you up on that offer because prospecting, it's my first chapter of my book, is where it all begins.
Right.
It all begins in prospecting. The rest can't happen unless you've got somebody that you've identified that could potentially use what you've got.
Right. And there's only two ways to make that happen. You can attract them to you or you can go to them, but that's it.
Correct.
You've got to find a way to do those things.
Steve, it's been a pleasure having you on the Business Superfans podcast. Great conversation. Definitely some phenomenal insights that you shared with our listeners. And we look forward to having you on the show down the road.
Thanks, Freddy. Great stuff. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Business Superfans podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who could use these powerful insights to level up their business. Remember, creating Business Superfans isn't just about your customers. It's about fostering genuine, impactful connections across your entire business ecosystem. When you invest in those relationships, success doesn't just happen, it accelerates. Until next time, I'm your host, Freddy D. Let's keep building superfans, creating unstoppable momentum, and driving your business toward extraordinary success. See you in the next episode.
We hope you took away some useful knowledge from today's episode of the Business Superfans podcast. The path to success relies on taking action. So go over to businesssuperfans.com and get your hands on the book if you haven't already. Join the Accelerator community and take that first step in generating a team of passionate supporters for your business. Join us on the next episode as we continue guiding you on your journey to achieve flourishing success in business.